Hey everybody, Antipeter1M here and welcome to my channel. I haven't done a YouTube video specifically on ideas and updates on my life for quite a while, so I'm doing this video now. I have an idea that I should improve my speaking and my visual image, um, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit on how I'm going to do that. So with speaking, I have a lot of problems with developing my ideas in concrete and specific ways. And I'm going to try and be less airy-fairy and more concrete in the way that I express myself. Now, just looking at some of my own advice here. The interesting thing about the world that we live in is that when you are not effectively communicating with people, they won't normally tell you what's wrong with what you're doing. You have to figure it out all yourself because people are very fickle. So not only the person who is communicating might take offense at what is being advised to them, but there are other people looking at them find it very hard to communicate how they feel about the person who is communicating. So I guess it's up to me to determine why my body language and my speaking ability is not as popular as it might be. One of the huge misinfluences in my life in regards to my speaking and my visual presentation is my father. My father is a very stoic man and he doesn't express himself well, except in certain contexts over the phone, for example, when he's actually very egotistical. When his ego is activated, he communicates very well. Whereas for me, it's the opposite. When my ego is deactivated, I tend to speak better and more eloquently. And there's a difference there. And I get almost consumed and almost daunted by the way that my dad dominates the conversation um, when his ego is given free rein and a sort of drive to dominate the conversation. So, for me to actually speak more eloquently, I need to demote the ego and promote something else within me that drives me to be able to speak with something from within. I very much believe that there will be a lot of people in the world, probably the vast majority of sons and daughters who are hybrids of their parentage. I made a quote about that. We are hybrids of our parentage. Hybris is the word that I invented, a combination of the word hubris, which means arrogance, and hybrid, which means a combination like a fusing of different origins. By being a hybris of our parents, we limit our ability to speak naturally and as ourselves in so many social situations. So I have an opportunity at a library in a couple of weeks to engage in a podcasting workshop and learn how to podcast. This will teach me a lot because I believe that podcasting is my great weakness. I very much rely, like my father does, on being visual and, as my father would say, eyeballing the other person, which is pretty much too excessive and too oppressive, in my opinion. Being able to speak without visual cues is just as important as speaking with those visual cues. So I'm going to develop my abilities in that. So once I've developed the talent and skill in being able to podcast and speak without visual cues, I will then restore the visual cues and then see what happens. Like magic, I'll be able to speak um, with great clarity, but at the same time retain those visual cues and be able to incorporate them into better communication. You like the phrase self-voyeuring freezer, which is a summation of how I actually behave currently. Self-voyeuring means that I look at myself from a distance and sort of admire myself too much, and freezer means that I freeze up too much. So self-watering freezer. I freeze up and I can't express myself with words at certain times. As you can see with this video, for example, I'm pausing a lot just to gather my thoughts. Whereas in an ideal situation, I would be speaking on minutes on end, and not stopping bit by bit. I also believe that I need to develop my visual acuity or visual image. This involves things like knowing how my eyes work, being able to express myself with my eyes and with my mouth. Um, and obviously, my head, the way that it moves and so on, expresses a certain interest or disinterest to other people. When I was younger, my eyes were much more sort of beautiful and attractive. And now that I've got a sort of elongated face and double chin and everything, it's much harder for me to communicate my interest to other people just through the use of my eyes. So I'm going to work on that if possible. So a lot of people who don't have a disability at all would assume that it's just completely easy to speak like a normal person. And this is something that I don't take for granted at all, because I realize as someone who doesn't have the talent to speak and to have visual impact with my presentation, it's not something to be taken for granted at all. Rather, it's something that has to be learned, and it's not a gift that is naturally given to me. So yeah, I do have an eccentric side to me, eccentric attitudes and eccentric personas within me, and I think that's something that I feel my father has blessed me with. But that in itself has left me without the talent to express myself as a normal person, and that's why I'm going to develop my skills in being normal and being able to be normal without always being normal at all the time. Just being able to have the skill to be normal is something that I will deeply treasure. So looking forward to developing myself in that regard. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.